Greetings from Brother Stephen. I am a disciple and witness of Yahshua Christ to all the inhabitants of the earth. I present to you as a witness the gospel of the kingdom. In this lesson titled Sheep in the Midst of Wolves, we'll be going over Matthew chapter 10, verse 16 through 31. If this is the first time you have tuned in to one of my Bible studies, this will probably be the most confusing information you have ever seen. But if you have been following through, basically what we're going to use this lesson for is a medium point to bring all the Bible studies that I have done so far. There's about 60 Bible studies that I have done. We're going to take all of that information and put it into this Bible study as a medium point before we continue in scriptures to make sure everything makes sense and to tie all of these doctrines together to make sure that they all making sense. So again, this is a sheep in the midst of wolves. We'll be going over Matthew chapter 10, verses 16 to 31. And it's comfort. The section of scriptures in Matthew 10 is known as comfort in persecution and I believe fearing God alone. So behold, I send you. Again, at this point, it's important to understand that this you are 12 of the disciples. And we're going to go over a few scriptures. Go to Matthew chapter 10, verses 1 through 4. This is just a few verses up in the book of Matthew. It says, and when he called unto him his 12. This really should be in this translate as 12 of his. And the reason it translates as 12 of his is because Yahshua had more than 12 disciples, but he called 12 of his disciples. If you go to John 6, 66 to 67, it said from that time, many of his disciples went back. And that word is many, that means a lot. And walked no more with him. Then said Yahshua unto the 12, will you also go away? And again, this ties back to the Bible study we did, patches and wineskin, in Luke chapter 5, verses 36 to 38. It says, as he spake a parable unto them, no man put a piece of new garment upon old. If otherwise, then both the new make a tear, and the piece that was taken out of the new agree not with the old. No man put new wine into old bottles, else the new wines will burst, and the wineskins will be spilled, and the wineskins shall perish. But new wine must be put into new wineskins, and both are preserved. No man also, having drunk old wine, straightway desire new, for he said the old is better. It's easier to deal with old information than it is with new information. And this is one of those lessons. This lesson, sheep in the midst of wolves, this is new wine. And this new wine must be put into new wineskins. Like I say again, I have an entire lesson dedicated on this topic. It's an hour and 24 minutes long. If you want a more in-depth understanding about patches and wineskins, you have to go to the lesson, patches and wineskins. And we covered that in Matthew chapter 9, verses 16 and 17. So as you said, Yahshua gave them power. This word power means to give orders and enforce obedience. If we translate that today, it would mean authority. So Yahshua gave them authority against unclean spirits. These are what we call split personalities. Scientific term today, but in biblical terms, demons. It say, and to cast them out, and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease. Again, we go over this in Possessed with Devils and the Potter and the Clay. He gave them power to over cells, nucleus, chromosomes, DNA. In other words, to invert inversions, to delete duplications, and to fill in deletions. This was the power that he gave to the disciples. To cast out demons and to heal all manner of sickness and disease where they had to leave the body. Whether it is HIV, hepatitis, Ebola, influenzas, he gave them power over all defects in the human body. Verse 2. Now the name of the 12 disciples are these. The first Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew his brother, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip of Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the publican, James the son of Alphaeus, and Lebbaeus, whose surname was Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. And we also talk about Judas Iscariot and patches and wineskin. If you go to John chapter 6 verses 52 to 60, it says, the Jews therefore strove among themselves, saying, how can this man give us his flesh to eat? The reason I'm going over this scripture is because this is why the disciples decided to walk away and leave. This is why many of the disciples left. The Jews therefore strove among themselves, saying, how can this man give us his flesh to eat? Then Yahushua said unto them, verily, verily, I say unto you, except you eat the flesh. This is talking about the skin, muscle, and nerve tissue of the Son of Man, and drink his blood, his DNA, his genetic code, you have no life in you. So I'm going to say again, except you eat his flesh, talking about skin cells, muscle cells, nerve cells. Why? Because inside of every cell is a nucleus. Inside every nucleus is a chromosome, and wrapped around chromosome is DNA. Whosoever eat my flesh, again talking about his skin, muscle, and nerve tissue or cells, and drink my blood, have eternal life. If you go to Leviticus chapter 17, verses 10 through 11, it says, and whatsoever man there be of the house of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn among you, that eat any manner of blood, I will even set my face against that soul that eat blood, and will cut him off from among his people. For the life of the flesh is in the blood. So one of the reasons Christ is telling us to eat his flesh and drink his blood, because the life of the flesh is in the blood. Here in Leviticus it's telling you not to, and the reason in Leviticus is telling you not to is because the life of the flesh is in the blood. If there's a virus and infections, it's in the blood. Different species harbor different strains of viruses and diseases. So if you're eating blood, you're transferring, you eating these viruses and infections. They become part of your DNA. God was trying to protect them and warn them. This is why a lot of people today don't eat pork, because swine and pork is very close to humans' tissue. So whatever can survive in swine and pork, if a person eat pork, they can catch those viruses and infections. Go back to Matthew chapter 8, verses 28 to 34. We talk about the demons was cast out of the pigs. Again, we talk about this in Possessed with Devils. You have to go back to that study to get a full understanding. This lesson is just designed to be a review of all these lessons. It says, and when he was come out on the other side of the country of the Gergesites, there met him two possessed with devils, coming out of the tomb, exceeding fierce, so that no man might pass by the way. And behold, they cried out, saying, what have we to do with you, Yahushua, you Son of God? Are you come hither to torment us before the time? And there was a good way off from them an herd of many swine feeding. Now again, if you go back to Leviticus chapter 11, this was the law given to the children of Israel of clean and unclean animals. It says, and Yod-Heh-Vav spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, these are the beasts which you shall not eat. All the beasts that are on the earth, whatsoever divide the hoof. This is a divided hoof. It means their hoof is completely separated, and it's cloven footed, have two toes. So I have a divided hoof, cloven foot, two toes. And chew the cud. That means that that's partially digested fruit brought back up from the stomach, for another to chew, like a camel. So it say, among the beasts that shall ye eat, nevertheless, these shall you not eat from them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof, as the camel. So this is a camel foot. Although it appears it has two toes, if you look at its print on the ground, it is not cloven footed. The two toes are not completely separated. So it says, as the camel, because he chew the cud, but divide not the hoof. He is unclean. Now, why does he say the animal is unclean? Because the animal is easy for these type of animals to have demons and to be infected with viruses and infections that can easily spread to humans. Again, this is why people don't eat pork, because the scriptures say these are the animals you shall eat that are cloven footed, that may only have two toes. If you look at the feet of a pig, although it appeared to have only two toes, it actually have more than two toes. It has 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when you actually look at the bottom of a pig's feet, their foot, the two toes are not completely separated. Pigs were considered unclean. Why? Go back over here. This is human organs. In today's world, they have figured out that human organs for transplant can be grown in pigs. These pigs have been genetically modified to produce these organs, But the reason they use pigs to grow human organs is because pigs um, basically their DNA or the genetic code is really close to humans. So whatever can survive and grow in humans or in pigs or swine can also survive and grow in humans. So if they can grow um, organs for transplant in pigs, viruses, bacteria, and demons also, if they can, these viruses, bacteria can survive in pigs, they can be transferred to humans. Uh, Pigs are a perfect host for experimenting with to figure out what will the consequences be for humans. So let's go back here. So the devils, the salt, they begged Yahashua, saying, if you cast us out, suffer us to go into the herd of swine. So why did the demons want to go back into the herd of swine? Because they can continue to reproduce in the swines. Just like they produce in humans, they can continue to reproduce in the swines. Why did they want to go back into the swines? Because if they're producing in the swine and the people are eating the swine, the people are um, transplanting the virus back in themselves again. So in other words, the demons thought they was being slick. And Yahushua said unto them, go. And when they would come out, they went into the herd of swine. And behold, the whole herd of swine ran violently down a steep place into the sea and perished in the waters. So why did Yahushua go across this sea to cast out these demons? Now it is completely obvious. The people, the swines, were filled with demons, viruses, and bacteria that was affecting people. Christ went to destroy the virus, the demons, and the bacteria. It said, and they that kept the swine fled and with their weight into the city, and told everything and what was befallen to the possessed of devils. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Yahushua. And when they saw him, they begged him. They begged him just like the devils begged him, that he would depart out of their coast. Why? Because they was all filled with demons. And you say, how was the whole city filled with demons? Because the city was eating swine. The virus was coming from the swines to the people. And the reason these two men had so many demons, because they fed on swine. They helped the pigs that was producing the viruses and the bacteria, and they kept eating. They was basically, I forgot the term here, modifying these demons, these viruses and everything. So that is why Christ went back over. And when you think about it, it all makes sense. He went over to destroy these demons. That's why he cast the pigs into the sea. He got rid of the virus, rid of the disease, rid of the demon that was possessing people. Go to John chapter 6, verse 60 through 65. It says, whosoever eat my flesh, this is Christ now again talking, his skin, his muscles, and his nerve tissue, and drink his DNA, hath eternal life. When you eat the skin, muscle, and nerve tissue and blood of animals that are infected with demons cause death. He's saying his skin, his muscle, his nerve tissue, his DNA is a vaccine for death. It is a vaccine for everything. And he says, and I will raise you up at the last day. For my flesh is food indeed. And my blood, my DNA, his genetic code is drink indeed. He that eat my flesh and drink my blood. Remember, worthily, anybody just can't eat his flesh and drink his blood. You have to eat it worthily. This goes back into patches and wineskin. If you eat it unworthily, ye shall burst. So he that eat my flesh and drink my blood dwell in me and I in him. So what does that mean? It means you connected to Christ. Dwell in him and he in you. This lesson ties us all the way back to the very first lesson. Jesus was God and with God in the beginning. John 1:1 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. So how is it that the Word was God and with God? They was connected. So this is us. This is Christ. This is Christ. This is the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was in God, and the Word was God. Because it's a link, but it's a link connected to a chain. Again, go to John 14:10. So in other words, if you want to be connected to God, you have to do what? Cure yourself of devils, demons, and viruses. What is the purpose of Christ? Christ's purpose is to make sure none of these demons, viruses, or bacteria endanger God. He's that link to make sure God stays safe. John, and if you want to be, you have to get rid of these demons that's in you, these viruses, sicknesses, and disease, these mutations in the chromosomes and DNA. They're deadly. So believest you not, this is Christ talking, that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. He said, the words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwell in me, he do the works. John 14:20. And that day ye shall know, in that day ye shall know, I am in the Father is in me, and I in you. He's going to connect us to the Father. No man cometh unto the Father but by Christ. Why no man cometh unto the Father but by Christ? He's that protector. Just like we have things in our body that protects us from viruses, that the first time a virus is introduced into the body, the things in our body begin to fight off the virus. That's what Christ is. He makes sure no viruses, no sickness, no disease is connected to God. Again, if you want a more in-depth understanding, all you have to do is go back to this lesson. We're going to keep going. As the living Father hath sent me, and I live by my Father, so he that eat me, even he shall live by me. This is the bread, the food which come down from heaven. Not that as your fathers did eat manna, and it's talking about manure, and are dead. If you will say, what do you mean manna is talking about manure? That's why it's important. When I first started these lessons, I said follow along from the first one to the end so you can understand everything. But if this is your first time tuning in, if you want to understand what manna means, how manna is manure, you have to go back and watch this lesson. It's in there. He said, and are dead. He that eat of this bread, to mouth this food, his body, shall live forever. These things he said in the synagogue as he taught in Capernaum. So now we're back to John 6 and 65, when many of his disciples turned away. They say, many, therefore his disciples, when they heard these things, the things that I just told you about, eat his flesh, his cells, his DNA, his blood, they didn't understand what he was talking about. So they said, this is a hard saying. Who can hear it? Again, ties back to patches and a wineskin. Cannot put new wine into old bottles. When Yahushua knew in himself that his disciples murmured at him, he said unto them, do this offend you? What, and if ye shall see the Son of Man ascend up where he was before, it is the Spirit that quicken. So in other words, he's saying it is the Spirit that make alive or give life. So again, he's trying to tell him this is why you want to eat his flesh and drink his blood, because in him is life. And that's why to say he shall raise them up in the last day. Go to again, Genesis 72. And Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh, God pottered Adam out of the dust of the ground, red clay, and Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh breathed into his nostrils the breath, spirit of life. And that spirit is DNA. Hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus. Makes a genetic code, DNA. DNA wrapped around chromosomes. Chromosomes are nucleuses. Nucleuses are in cells. In other words, Adam life existed in these forms before they was put into Adam's nostril. If you go to Leviticus 17:11, it says, for the life of the flesh, the life of the skin, the life of the muscles, the life of the nerves, the life of these things, the life of the skin cells, is in the blood, in the DNA, in the genetic code, in the information and instructions. So once he put this genetic code, his informations and instructions, then Adam, the red man, became a living soul. Again, Adam life existed before he became living. I want to tie this back to true disciples and apostles. Go back to John 1. When we talk about people being ordained before they was even born. The day Yahushua would go forth unto Galilee and find Philip and said unto him, follow me. Now Philip was of Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip find Nathanael and said unto him, we have found him, of whom Moses in the Torah. This word law translates in Hebrew, this word is Torah. This is where people get the word Torah from. And the prophets did write, Yahushua of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. And Nathanael said unto him, can there any good thing come out of Nazareth? Philip said unto him, come and see. Yahushua saw Nathanael coming to him, and said of him, behold, an Israelite indeed. Like I say, I'll talk about this in depth in the true disciples and apostles. Right now, just a quick review, bringing everything together. If you go to Romans 9:6, the reason he said a true Israelite indeed, if you go to Romans 9:6, it say, for they are not all Israel, which are of Israel, neither because they are the seed of Abraham are they all children. So he's saying this is an Israelite indeed. that is, they which are the children of the flesh, it's about circumcised, that keep the Torah, that are under the law. These are not the children of God. Romans 9:2, 28-29. For he is not a Jew, an Israelite, which is one, neither is that circumcision, which is outward, in the flesh, outwardly. In other words, he's talking about in the skin, in the tissue. But he is a Jew, which is inwardly, talking about the DNA, the genetic code. And circumcision, this word circumcision is the removing. So not the removing of skin, but the removing is that of the heart. Talking about the blood and the spirit, the DNA. So in other words, he's talking about you Israel, not because your cells, your skin, but what is in your DNA, your genetic code. And not in the letter. The letter means not in the law, the Torah. So say in whom if we go back up, he called him Israelite indeed. Look, and then he say in whom is no guile. In other words, he's saying he had a circumcised heart. He had no mutations, no changes of the structure in his genes. He wasn't sick. He wasn't polluted. Nathanael said unto him, Whence know you me? Yahushua answered and said unto him, Before that Philip called you, when you was under the fig tree, I knew you. In the King James Version, it say, I saw you, but if you look that up in the Greek, it means I knew you. And I have the scripture here so you can understand what it's talking about. In Jeremiah 1:5, it says, Before I pottered you in the belly, I knew you. So you go, how do Christ knew me before he pottered me in the belly? Go back to Genesis 7:2. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh pottered Adam of the dust of the red clay. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh breathed into his nostrils the breath or spirit of life, DNA. So if Adam life existed before it was blown to his nostrils, he knew the DNA. He knew the structure of the chromosome. He knew the code and the information in the genes. So before I pottered you, I knew you. He knew your genetic code. He knew exactly what you was going to be like because you come from your mother and your father's DNA. Again, if you go to Leviticus 17:11, he say, For the life of the flesh is in the DNA, in the genetic code, in the information and instructions. So before we are formed in our parents' womb, these are our parents. There are 46 chromosomes in each cell. So this is a cell. In each cell, there are 46 chromosomes. They are in 22 pairs, and 2 of those chromosomes basically determine what the sex is going to be. If you're a male, it's an X and a Y. If you're a female, it's if you're a female, it's an XX. And if you're a male, it's an XY. So basically what Christ is talking about here, he said, before you was in, I formed you in the belly, I knew you. Because of the chromosomes, that your parents have, each child that is born get a chromosome from the father and a chromosome from the mother. And on these chromosomes is a genetic code. It's information and instructions. So before you was ever born, the information from these chromosomes, Christ know exactly what type of person you are going to be, what type of disabilities you are going to have. Are you going to be a good person, a bad person, a sickly person? Because it's all on the genetic code and DNA that come from your parents. And he says, so he breathed into Adam the breath of life, and Adam became a living soul. Again, Adam life existed before he became living. In other words, Christ knew exactly how Adam was going to be. Move to Jeremiah 1 and 5. Again, before I formed you, pottered you in the belly, I knew you, your genetic code. And before you came forth out of the womb, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet unto the nations. Going back to John 6, verses 60 through 65, it's talking about again when many of the disciples turned away. It say it is the spirit, talking about the blood and the DNA that quickens, that make alive. So again, it's talking about the flesh. So what is the flesh? In Genesis 2 and 7, in Yod He Vav He, God pottered Adam of the dust of the red clay. So flesh come from dust. Where does dust come from? Go to Genesis 1 and 10. And let the dry firmament appear. And it was so. And God called the dry firmament earth. So flesh comes from clay. Clay comes from the earth. Where does the earth come from? Go back to Genesis 1, 6 and 8. The second day, the firmament. And God said, let there be a firmament, a molten core in the midst of the waters. I have a lesson titled The Firmament. If you want more information on that, go back to the Bible studies, look for the lesson titled The Firmament. He put a hot core in the middle of the waters. And this is where the earth came from. So it say the flesh, the tissue, the cells, profit nothing. Why? Because they come from non-living material. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit. So Adam's body really didn't profit him anything. It was the spirit that he blew into Adam's nostrils, the genetic code, the information and instructions, the DNA, and they are life. Because again, DNA wrapped around chromosomes. Chromosomes are nucleuses. Nucleus give the cells life. But it's all come from the genetic code, DNA. If you go to 1 Samuel 16 and 7, it says, but Yod He Vav He said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance, talking about his face, his skin, we're talking about tissue, or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For Yod He Vav He see not as man see. For man look on the outward appearance, the flesh, the tissue, but Yod He Vav He look on the heart. In other words, deep into the genetic code and DNA. While we're looking at men's cells and what's on the outside, God is looking deep at the genetic code and information that makes them up. Again, John chapter 6, verse 60 through 65. Many therefore of his disciples, when they had heard this, said, this is a hard saying. Who can hear it? When Yahushua knew in himself that his disciples murmured at it, he said unto them, do this offend you? What, and if you shall see the Son of Man ascend where he was before? It is the Spirit that quicken, making alive, and give life. It is the Spirit, blood, DNA, that quickens. The flesh, the tissue, cells profit nothing because they come from non-living material. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. So what does Christ mean when he's talking about eat his flesh and drink his blood? He tells you right here, I speak unto you, the words that I speak are spirit, DNA. They genetically modify the code in your genes. God's word genetically modifies the genes in your DNA. That is why it's very important that you read the Bible, the Word of God, and the Bible only, not listening to some man speak his own words and his own wisdom for hours. Why? A man's word does not modify, correct, and restore your genes, your genetics, and your DNA. Only the Word of God does. But there are some of you that believe not, for Yahushua knew from the beginning. Now again, he's saying he knew from the beginning. What beginning? To figure out what beginning. We're talking about his disciples turn away. He said he knew his disciples would turn away from the beginning. What beginning? This is all we're going back to Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth. So you go, how did God know from in the beginning, when he created the heavens and the earth, that disciples was going to turn away? He said who they were that believed not and who should betray him. And he said, therefore I say unto you that no man can come unto me except you are given unto him of the Father. So in the beginning, how did Christ know what was going to happen? Because he put it in Adam. It's all a genetic code, like a computer program. He programmed everything to be this way. You go to Romans 9:21. It said, had not the potter power over the clay? Of the same lump he make one vessel unto honor and another unto dishonor. He knew from the beginning who they will be. Again, this ties back into the potter and the clay. Matthew chapter 10, verses 16 to 25. We're back at comfort and persecution. So he says, he says, behold, I send you. Talking about the disciples, the 12 disciples. Fourth, as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be you therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Now remember, we're going to go back to Matthew chapter 13, verse 34. All these things spake Yahushua unto the multitude in parables. This is a parable. Sheep in the midst of wolves. And without a parable spake he not unto them, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, saying, I open my mouth in parables. I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. So I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. He uttering something that have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. He's not talking about sheep and wolves. This is a parable, a metaphor. Go to Psalm 78:2. This is the prophecy that they're talking about in Matthew. Say, I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter dark sayings. This word dark saying means mysteries of old. mysteries which have been kept secret from the foundations of the world. So what is he talking about? I'll send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. I hope this blow y'all man like it blew my man when God revealed it to me. So let's go back over Matthew chapter 10. Behold, I send you forth as sheep. What are sheep? Small, white, living animals in the midst of wolves. What are wolves? Wolves are wild beasts that eat blood. They eat sheep. They eat the small white things. So again, behold, I send you forth as sheep. He's talking about leukocytes. What are leukocytes? White blood cells in the immune system that protect and heal. He said, I'm sending you forth to protect and heal in the midst of infectious diseases that devour blood cells. Now it says, be you therefore wise or intelligent as serpent. What does this mean, be wise as serpent? This ties back to Genesis 3:1. Now the serpent was more intelligent than any beast. What is the beast? Wolves of the field. And we're talking about, in a little letter, we'll tell you exactly what this field is. In the field, which Yod He Vav He God has made. So he's telling them to be as wide as serpent. Because what is the serpent? We talked about this first in possessed with devils. No, actually, we talked about this first in when they say the fifth day God created a cherubim. We talked about how the serpent in Genesis basically hijacked the body of a cherub. And how did the serpent get into the cherub? Virus, infections, disease, and hijacked the serpent. And the serpent hijacked a cherubim. And we talked about that in Possessed with Devils. So the first lesson is the fifth day God created a cherubim. And then we talk about how the serpent infected the cherubim and possessed with devils. Just like they was able to go into the pigs, they able to go into birds. They able to go into any living tissue. Now, another thing we talked about in the fifth day God created cherubim is that why they call him serpent, because of the constellation serpent. Like I said, again, a lot of this stuff you have to go back to these studies and watch so you can have a deeper understanding of what it's talking about. But one of the questions that I still had at this point, we're going to talk about here in a second, is why we know why he's referred to as a dragon, talking about Satan, because he hijacked the body of a cherubim, which is nothing but a dragon. But the question that still have not been answered is, why is Satan referred to as a serpent? We go to Revelations 12:3-4. It's talking about, and there appeared a great wonder in the constellations. Behold, a great red dragon. Go back up here real quick. Having 7 heads. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7 stars that make up serpent. And 10 horns. I don't know what the 10 horns is. And 7 crowns. Talking about the 7 stars that make up Corona Borealis upon his head. So this is talking about, this is why he is referred to as serpent in the book of Genesis. It's referring to the constellation serpent. But the reason, and I'll just say it here and try to explain it later, the reason Satan is referred to as the constellation serpent is because he is a virus in the shape of a serpent. And that is why he's referred to as the serpent. Scientifically, this is called like a helmet virus, and they're like worms. So that is why he's referred to as a serpent. So when you say, how did he infect the cherubim? It was more like a worm, tapeworm, that would have infected the cherubim. You go to Matthew, we're back at Matthew chapter 10, verses 16 to 25. It says, behold, I send you forth as leukocytes, white blood cells, in the immune system to protect and heal in the midst of wolves infectious diseases that devour blood cells. Be ye therefore intelligent as serpent and harmless as doves. What are doves again? Doves represent leukocytes. Again, look, white, they small white. Doves are small and white. Talking about leukocytes, white blood cells. So it's saying be wise as serpent. So that means infect people, get into people's DNA, get into people's genetics. Correct, but be harmless. So don't cause mutations like the serpent did, but heal them. Unmutate them. So that's what I mean. Harmless as doves, harmless as white blood cells. Protect and heal. If you go to Acts chapter 20 and 29, Acts chapter 20, verse 29, it says, for I know this, that after my departing shall grievous wolves. These are talking about demons, infectious virus and disease enter in among you, not sparing the flock. What do he mean, not sparing the flock? The white blood cells, the sheep. Demons and infection diseases going to enter into your body and kill you. Now let's just apply this. What are white blood cells? White blood cells, they are manufactured in bone marrow. A low white blood cell count is when this happens, what does it cause? Viral infections, disorders present at birth, birth defects, cancer. Cancer among black people is extremely high. Why? Because the demons and the infectious virus are attacking our white blood cells. Autoimmune disorders, severe and any type of severe infection, diseases such as AIDS and HIV, leukemia, tuberculosis. Again, for I know that after my departing, demons, infectious viruses, and diseases will enter in among you, not sparing your white blood cells, killing you. Matthew 7, verses 6. Give not that which is holy unto dogs. Talking about unto wolves, people possessed with demons, who feed on the sheep, who trying to kill you. Don't give them what's holy. Don't give them leukocytes. Don't try to heal them. Look again, neither cast your pearls. What are pearls? Small white things again. Don't cast your leukocytes, your white blood cells, before swine, filthy, infected pigs. But this is referring to people who love and feed on filth. It says, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and violently attack you. Why? Because if they are full of bacteria and diseases, you are leukocytes. You're killing them. They don't want you to kill them. They're going to fight against you to stay alive. This is why the flesh war against the spirit and the spirit against the flesh. This is why the scriptures say that which is an abomination to a righteous man, um, the ways of the righteous man is an abomination to the wicked, and the ways of the wicked is an abomination unto the righteous. It is a biological warfare that's going on inside of us, inside of our DNA, inside of our genetics. It's way smaller than it appears, but the effects are way bigger than we can ever imagine. So again, give not that which is holy unto dogs. Demon-possessed people, wicked people that don't love God, don't love righteousness. Neither cast your pearls before swine. Filthy people who love to feed on filth. Because when you are a white blood cell, you're killing the viruses and bacteria. They are viruses and bacteria who wants to stay alive. If you're giving them the gospel, you are destroying those viruses and bacteria. They're going to fight against you because they don't want to die. So let's go back to Matthew. We have chapter 10, verses 1 through 4. Because we're talking about sheep. They call them sheep, leukocytes, white blood cells. He said, and when he had called his 12, Yahushua gave them power against unclean spirits, sheep, in the midst of wolves, to cast them out and to heal all manner of sicknesses and all manner of diseases. But those are the people who are seeking, who want to be healed. If they do not want to be healed, if they love the filth and the bacteria and the germs and the demons, do not cast your leukocytes before these demons. Go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. It says, and God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. In other words, what I'm about to explain here now, you go back to Genesis 10, 1 through 4. It says, and Yahushua gave them back authority. What authority did he give back them? Remember, Christ comes to restore all things. So the authority that Adam lost, he restored it. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over all creeping things that creep upon the earth. So what did he do? He restored. He gave back the disciples power and authority over everything, even Satan, his demons, and diseases. Because this is the power that Adam had in the beginning, that he lost when he was kicked out of the Garden of Eden. You go to Isaiah 40:29. Behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare before they spring forth. I tell you of them. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. He's restored. Old things are passed away, and behold, all things become new, restored. Christ came to restore us. And this is the power that he gave unto the disciples to restore. Again, Revelations 21, 5-8. And he that sat upon the throne, this is the end. Behold, I make all things new. He restore all things. And he said unto me, write, for these words are true and faithful. And he said unto me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that athirst. This is why I go back to that study. Hunger and thirst after righteousness shall be full of the fountains of the water of life freely. He that overcomes shall inherit all things. I will be his God, and he shall be my son. But the fearful, and the unbelieving, and the abominable, and the murderers, and the whoremongers, and the sorcerers, and idolaters, and all the liars shall have their part in the lake of fire which burn, have their part in the lake which burn with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. He's going to put a flame to all viruses, diseases, bacteria, germs, anything that affects the genetic code. Going to inherit and burn forever. Now, the lake of fire don't seem so cruel, do it? It is to put an end to sickness and disease and death and evil and this biological warfare. This is back in Matthew. It said, but beware of men. Let me go back up here, read the last verse where I left off. So we're here. It says, "By send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be wise as serpent and harmless as doves." Now when we get down here, it says, "But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues." In other words, like I said before, the world is evil, ruled by Satan. People have demons, devils, bacteria, their genetic code is not right. And when you're in the world doing good, the consequences of curing diseases is killing bacteria, killing germs, getting rid of them. So the world is going to fight against you to try to defend against you healing it. So, and you shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. Beware. He don't tell you to beware of nothing. He don't tell them to beware of the devil. He don't tell them to beware of bacteria, germs. Only thing he tells, beware of other men. But when they deliver you up, take no thought how or what ye shall speak, for it shall be given you in the same hour what you shall speak. For it is not you that speak, but the Spirit of your Father which speak in you. Just like I read earlier, Christ said, "It is the Father that speaks to me." Now I want this, chapter 17. Remember, he said, "After my departing, this shall begin to happen." So when you in Genesis 17, this is talking immediately like after Christ departing, he ascended up into the heavens. When you get to verse, well, I'll get to it when I get there. You just go back here and read through. So this is verse 17. So I'm giving you a scripture. He said this is immediately after Christ departing. If you go to Acts, I just want to give you an example of what he's talking about here. When he said, "Beware of men, for they will deliver you up, and they will scourge you in the synagogues, and ye shall be brought before governors and kings for my name's sake." So I want to give you an example of that. If you go to Acts chapter 22, this is Paul the Roman citizen, I'll call it, or Saul the nigger. It says, "And when they gave audience unto the word, and then lifted up their voice and said, Away with such a fellow from the earth, for it is not fit that he should live. And as they cried out and cast off their clothes and threw dust into the air, the chief captain commanded him to be brought into the castle, and commanded that he should be made an example." Talking about made a public example. Look what it say, by scourging. So again, when you go back up here, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. Now we're reading the fulfillment of this prophecy right in the book of Acts. And I talk about this in the genealogy of Yahushua. And it says that he might know wherefore they cried so against him. Remember, Paul is a leukocyte. And as they bound him with rope Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman? Now, the question is this. If Paul was white, they would have known he had rights, and they would have known that he was a Roman. The reason they did not know Paul was a Roman is because Paul was a nigger. It was very rare for black people back then to be born as be Roman citizens. But let's just keep reading. If you go to Acts 13:1, it say, now there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers as Barnabas, Simon, I'm just skipping this real quick, Lucius, Manon, and Saul, that was called nigger. This is not just calling Barnabas and Simon a nigger. It's also talking about Lucius, Manon, and Saul. If Barnabas, Simon, Lucius, Manon, and Paul are all Israelites, but they only calling Simon a nigger, that don't even make any sense. If Simon an Israelite and a nigger, what is Barnabas, Lucius, Manon, and Saul? All but they Caucasian. No, they all niggers, which were brought up with Herod. Herod, this is the King Herod that beheaded John the Baptist. So again, is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? I mean, he has rights. When the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, saying, take heed that you do not, take heed of what you do, for this man is a Roman. Again, they didn't know he was a Roman at first because he's black and not white. Then the chief captain came and said unto him, tell me, are you a Roman? He said, yes. And the chief captain answered, with a great sum of money. When they say a great sum, he's talking about money. Obtain I this. He tried to acquire or purchase his freedom. But now, because what? Black people are slaves. They were slaves back then. Some of them in Rome, but look what it say. And Paul said, I was free born. I was born free. So you don't have to purchase me. Paul was a nigger, not a Roman. Romans was never born slaves. So now again, like I say, now all of that, if you want to in depth, you have to go back to the genealogy of Yahshua. So we have Matthew chapter 10, verses 16 to 25, talking about comfort and persecution. It says, and a brother shall deliver up a brother to death, and a father the child, and the child shall rise up against their parents and cause them to be put to death. So first, like I said, first we read about, this is immediately after Christ's death, and we read about it in Acts. Now what he's talking about here in verses 21 through 22, he's talking about in the book of Revelations at the very end. So it's saying, cause them to be put to death, and he shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But he that endured, and here's the key, he that endured to the end, the same shall be saved. So what he's talking about, let's jump to the book of Revelation. Remember, like I said before, Christ has a tendency to sum up years and years and years and years of stuff just in 1, 2, 4 verses. So here he's talking about right when he died in verses 17 through 20, and then in verses 21 through 22, he's talking about the last days. So let's go to Revelation chapter 2, verses 8 through 11. It says, and when the angel of the church in Samarin, I might be pronouncing that wrong, sorry. These things said, the first and the last, which was dead and is alive. I know your works, and tribulation, and poverty, but you are rich. What do he mean you are rich? It's about they have treasures in heaven. Have to go back to the studies, treasures in heaven. Say, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not. We just talked about that. Not all who Israel is Israel. Not everyone who say they are Jew is an Israelite, but are the synagogue of Satan. Satan lives in them. And how does Satan live in them? Almost invisible to the human eye. He lives in them, and like viruses, tapeworms, infectious diseases, these things have a form, but they're invisible to the human eye. You need a microscope to see these things. And he said they are the synagogue of Satan, because Satan lives in them. Fear none of these things which ye shall suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you in prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be ye faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. He that endureth to the end, the same shall be saved. He that have an ear to hear, let him hear what the Spirit say unto the churches. He that overcome shall not be hurt of the second death. We're not going to go to hell and burn forever, like these people are, these infectious demons and viruses. Again, so in this, you go to Revelations chapter 13, verses 16 to 18. This part is talking about, it say, and brother shall deliver a brother to death, father the child, and children shall rise up against their parents and cause them to be put to death. What is that talking about? Go to Revelations. And he caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bound, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell unless he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who have understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. I'll go over this, both in the beast and his marks finally exposed, and the mark of the beast. So there's no confusion. So what's going to be happening in Revelations 13 and 6? People who do not have the mark, who trying to refuse the mark, hide, so they don't have to get the mark of the beast. Brother shall deliver up brother. Your own brother go be telling them where you at and put you to death. And father the child. And children shall rise up against their parents. Your people, own family members go be telling them because they don't want to get the mark of the beast. So let's go to verse 23. It says, but when they persecute you in this city, he's talking about Jerusalem. It say, flee you into another. For verily I say unto you, ye shall not go over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man is come. So again, talking about again when they say the Son of Man is come, if you go to Matthew chapter 10 verses 5 through 8, I'm just explaining this verse really quick. The reason he'd say, when they persecute you in Jerusalem, you got to remember this is talking about in the days of the disciples. It say, then the 12 sent forth and commanded them, saying, this is then Yahashua. The 12 Yahashua sent forth. He commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles. This is Europe. He's telling them to stay in Jerusalem, in Israel. And go not into the city of the Samaritans. Enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And when they go, they're going to be persecuted. And as ye go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Again, true disciples and apostles. And again, if you go to the marriage of the Lamb, I explain it in depth in the marriage of the Lamb. And we talk about the parable of the banquet. He said, and sent forth his messengers to call them that were bidden. He was telling Israel, he invited them to the wedding, and they would not come. Again, he sent his messengers saying, tell Israel, tell Jerusalem, they are bidden, invited. Behold, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fatlings are killed, and all things are ready. Come ye into the marriage. But they would not come. And again, we're talking about in verse 8, it say heal sicknesses, cleanse lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils. Again, because they're leukocytes, white blood cells. It say freely you have received, freely give. So this is when it's talking about the messengers going forth, while they're going telling people to come to the wedding, this is what they're doing. They're healing people, letting them know it's time. When you go to verse 5, it said, but they made light, like it wasn't important. They made light, they blasphemed, and it says, and went their way, and one to his farm, another to his merchandise, and another, and the remnant, means the rest of Israel, took his messengers, and it treated them, it just means treated them cruel and killed them. This is why he say, beware of men. Verse 24, it talks about, so basically just going back over this so I can, I know I understand it in my head. I'm just hoping as I'm reading through this that people is understanding it as well. If not, just keep watching it, go over some of these lessons, watch it again and again to make sure you have a complete understanding. He's telling them to go to Jerusalem to preach the gospel, to invite Israel first. Because Israel, the gospel is supposed to be preached to Israelites. They're supposed to have an opportunity to come. The Israelites don't come. They rebel. They kill the prophets. They kill Christ. Then after that, after Christ is raised from the dead, then the disciples is sent to the Gentiles. Then they sent to Europe. So that's why I say go not unto Europe first. Go to the Gentiles. Give them an opportunity to come to the wedding. Go to Israel. Invite them to the wedding first. Israel didn't come to the wedding. And if you read this parable, in this parable, then he sent them to the Gentiles. And I talk about all this in the marriage of the Lamb. So let's go to 24. It said the disciples is not above his master, nor the servant above his Lord. It is enough for the disciple that he is as his master, and the servant as his Lord. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more shall they call them of his household? So if you go to Matthew chapter 9, verses 32 through 34, it says, and they went out. Behold, they brought to him a dumb man possessed with a devil. And when the devil was cast out, the dumb spake. And the multitude marveled, saying, it was never so seen in Israel. But the Pharisees said, he cast out devils through the prince of devils. So this is what Christ said again. He predicted this would happen before it happened. He said, so if they called him Beelzebub, what are they going to call you, the disciples, the people that love and follow him? And again, if you go to Matthew chapter 12, verses 22 to 24, it says, then brought unto him one possessed with the devil, blind and dumb, and he healed him, insomuch that the blind and the dumb spake and saw. And all the people were amazed and said, is not this the son of David? But when the Pharisees heard it, they said, this fellow do not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub, the prince of devils. So this next lesson is just trying to get into so you understand who Beelzebub is, the prince of devils. And you got to go back to the Old Testament. This is 2 Kings chapter 1, verses 1 through 8. This is when Elijah denounces Ahaziah. Then Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab. And Ahaziah fell down through the floor in his upper chamber that was in Samaria, and he was seriously injured. And he sent messengers and said unto them, go inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover of this disease. Talking about this serious injury. He fell through the floor, hurt real bad, seriously injured, seriously sick, but not sick like with a disease. He was sick because he fell through the floor. It says, but the angel of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh said to Elijah the Tishbite, arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria. And that, look, and if you read here, this is why he's saying, go not unto Samaria, because that's where they served Beelzebub, the god of Ekron. And say unto them, is it not because there is not a God in Israel that you go inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Now therefore, thus said Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, you shall not come down from that bed on which you are gone up, but shall surely die. And Elijah departed. So people will go to this Beelzebub, god of Ekron, to be cured. And when the messengers turned back unto him, he said unto them, why are you now turned back? And they said unto him, there came a man up to meet us, and said unto us, go, turn again to the king that sent you, and say unto him, thus said Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, is it not because there is not a God in Israel that you send to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore you shall not come down from that bed. Like when he said come down from that bed, he fell through the floor. He was seriously injured. This is just like a person hurting themselves and ending up in the hospital, on which you are gone up, but shall surely die. And he said unto them, what manner of man was he which came up to meet you? And they told you these words. And they answered him, he was an hairy man, and girt with, this just means wore or had, a belt of leather about his waist. And he said, it is Elijah the Tishbite. Now the Tishbite just means prisoner. Elijah the prisoner. Now, while we're in this section, you can add this part of the section back to unsearchable riches, because I want to talk about Elijah for a second. And it's to tie it back again. We're tying all of the last Bible studies that I've done. We trying to cram this Bible study to bring everything to an understanding. All the stuff that I've been teaching, to make sure it's lined up and all makes sense. So this is the name of Elijah in Hebrew. The letters would be Aleph, Lamed, Yod, and Hey. This is Hebrew. This is ancient Hebrew down here. So this is how they write an Aleph now. When they first wrote an Aleph, it was an ox head. And when they first wrote Lamed, it was a shepherd's staff. When they first wrote Yod, it was an arm and a hand. Hey, it was man with arms raised. So when you're looking at Elijah names mean head shepherd, praised or worshiped or glorified. That's what hands and arms raised mean. Praised, glorified. So this is what Elijah names mean. If you go to 2 Kings chapter 2, it says Elijah was taken to heaven. It says, and it came to pass when Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh would take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind, that Elijah went with Elijah from Galilee. And it came to pass, as they still went on and taught, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven, and Elijah saw it. And we're going to go from here. Malachi 3:1. He said, behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. So this is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh talking. He said, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me, before Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh comes. This is why the disciples said, "We found the Messiah." And the Lord, who is the Lord? Your Creator, whom you seek, shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant. Talking about that new covenant. We talk about it in patches and wineskins also. Whom ye delight in, behold, he shall come, said Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh of hosts. So in Malachi 3:1, we have a prophecy that Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is going to come after the messenger. So who is the messenger? Go to Malachi 4:5. Behold, I will send you Elijah, who is taken up into a whirlwind. What does his name mean? Head shepherd is Yod-Heh, the head shepherd. We'll go back over it again. The head shepherd is Yod-Heh. And where do the Yod-Heh come from? If you look at Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, it is the first two letters of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So let's go over this again. Behold, I will send Elijah. What does Elijah's name mean? Head shepherd, praised or glorified. Basically talking about by men. So, behold, I will send you Elijah. The head shepherd is praised. That's what his name means. Elijah the prophet. Before the coming of the great and dreadful. So what is the great? The great is praised. And the dreadful is Vav-Heh, the day of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So try to explain this again so you understand. This is the name of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh in Hebrew. This is it in ancient Hebrew. As you can, this is why some people call him Yah, because it comes from the two letters in Elijah's name. Yah means like praised or glorified. And then you have Vav-Heh, which means crucified. Crucified. So because you have this basically represents a nail and then his hands and arms raised. So he's going to be glorified, then crucified. And that's what it means to say before the coming of the great, glorified, and dreadful, crucified day of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So let's just keep going. Now, we're talking about Elijah, and it said he's going to send his prophet Elijah before the great and terrible day of the Lord. So now we're about to jump to the birth of John the Baptist. And again, if I'm only going to, this is only a quick review. If you wanted to go over this in depth, you have to go back over that study. You have to go back over the study, prepare the way of the Lord. So let's get into Luke 1. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the course of Abba, and his wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinance of the Lord, blameless. This means they was perfect, did not commit sin. And they had no child because that Elizabeth was barren. This means sterile, not able to have children. And they both were now well stricken in years. This means Elizabeth went through menopause. She couldn't have kids anymore, and Zacharias couldn't have sex anymore. In other words, when men get so old, sometimes we call it erectile dysfunction. But the scriptures let us know, and they both were well stricken in years. They could not have kids anymore, even if Elizabeth wasn't barren. So when it came to pass that while he executed the priest office before God in the order of his course, according to the customs of his priest office, his duty was to burn incense when he went into the temple of the Lord. And while the multitude of the people were praying without at the time of incense, and there appeared unto him an angel of the Lord standing on his right side of the altar of incense. And when Zacharias saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. But the angel said unto him, Fear not, Zacharias, for your prayers is heard, and your wife Elizabeth shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name John. Now, what I have here, this is John's name. This is, you gotta remember, this is in this is an English. This is just the English version. If you look John's name up in Hebrew, his name would have been Yachanan. And this is how Yachanan looks in Hebrew. These are the letters Yod, Rush, A, Chaf, and Wa or Vav. This letter make a Wa sound or Vav sound. And then when you take these letters back to ancient Hebrew, you have hands and arms. The hands and arms, which represent like work, worship. Remember, I told you praise. Any synonyms that can gotta go with like hands and arms, work, worship. This is what they use to represent the symbol they drew to represent that. So you have hands and arms. Then you have rush, which is a head. The head, it can mean first or before. Then you have arms and raised, palms nailed. So basically, kind of what you have here is, again, you have praised or worshiped or glorified first, then crucified, hands and arms, palms open and nailed. Hands and arms raised, palms open and nailed. So this still represents crucified. So John named, just like Yod He Vav He, praised then crucified. Yachanan means praised first, then crucified. We're going to keep going. If you go to Malachi again, 4 and 5, it said, Behold, I will send you Elijah, the prophet, before the coming of the great. When he's first born, he's going to be praised and worshiped, and dreadful, then crucified. So this is Elijah. This is Yachanan, head, shepherd, praised. Praised first, then crucified. You cannot make this up. But we're going to keep going. Like I say, in these studies, you can take some of this information and add them back to those studies that I have done already, especially the one titled Unsearchable Riches, when we talking about how to understand the meaning of Yod He Vav He in Yahushua's name. So it says, And Zacharias said unto the angel, Whereby shall I know this? For I am an old man. He was saying, in other words, I cannot have sex anymore. And my wife is well stricken in years, menopause. In other words, she just can't get pregnant anymore. And the angel answered and said unto him, I am Gabriel, that stand in the presence of God, and I am sent to speak unto you, and to show you these glad tidings. And behold, ye shall be dumb, and not able to speak until the day that these things shall be performed, because you believe not my words, which shall be fulfilled in their season. So let's go, keep going. It says, And after those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived, and hid herself 5 months, saying, Thus hath the Lord dealt with me in my days, wherein he looked on me and took away my reproach among men, because she was barren. People consider that as a bad thing when a woman couldn't have kids. That means she's broken. Her body does not perform the duties that God designed it to do. If you go to Matthew 11:4, it says, And if you will receive it. This is Elijah, which was for to come. He that have an ear to hear, let him hear. So, I want to try to explain this. And he who have an ear to hear, let him hear. When Yachanan was born, Elijah, his mother was first pregnant, he was an embryo. These are the stages that an embryo develop into in the womb. When it comes out the womb, it eventually is a man. So we have Elijah being caught up into heaven and being turned back into an embryo. We know this is possible from an embryo to a man. Now, when I'm talking about from a man turning back into an embryo, this seems impossible because our science cannot explain this today. We cannot duplicate it. Anytime we cannot duplicate something by science, we consider it strange or it can't be true. But if it can go from an embryo, this thing here, and turn into a fully grown person, I'm sure God can take a fully grown person and turn it back into an embryo. This is just a power and a science that God has, that God can do. And now, even while this part might seem a little hard to believe, when you go to this next section, this won't be so hard to believe. It says, after those days, and after those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived and carried a pregnancy for another person. What does that mean? Elizabeth was a surrogate. You read it, they did not have sex. She ended up pregnant. This is Elijah who was to come. He went from embryo to man, from man back to an embryo. God took that embryo and placed him into the womb of Elizabeth. This part used to seem impossible to us, but now that because our science we're able to, it's just called vitro fertilization. We know this is very possible, that you can take an egg from another woman, a semen from a man, fertilize the egg, turn it into an embryo outside of a human body, then take that embryo and put it inside of a woman. This is called vitro fertilization. Very possible. Now, and it say, and she hid herself for 5 months. Let's see here. I'll just keep going. If you go to Luke chapter 1, verses 30 to 31, it says, and the angel said unto her, fear not, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And behold, you shall conceive in your womb and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Yahashua. What does Yahashua means? Hands and arms, arms and hands raised, crucified. He's dead on the cross. He's speared, and everybody's watched him. Now, like I say, I'll talk about this in depth in Unsearchable Riches. So you have to go back to that study. This study here is going to be long enough as it is. So you have to go back to those other studies if you want an in-depth understanding. If you go to Luke chapter 1, verses 34, it says, then said Mary unto the angel, how shall this be, saying, I know not a man? Now this ties back again to the house on a rock. In Daniel 2, verses 34, it says, ye saw it until a stone, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, which shall be for a sanctuary, a stone of stumbling. I go over all this in the house on a rock. which was cut out without man's hands. It said, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and broke them into pieces. So when she said, how shall this be? For I know not a man. And the angel of the Lord answered and said unto her, the Holy Ghost shall come upon you, and the power of the highest shall overshadow. This means talking about impregnate you. But it's not talking about with semen. It's talking about embryo transfer, the process of assisted reproduction in which embryos are placed into the uterus of a female with the intent to establish a pregnancy. So he, just like John the Baptist went from an embryo to a human, fully grown man, then from a fully grown man back into an embryo, and then placed in Elizabeth, God the Father did the same thing with God the Son. He took Christ, turned him into an embryo. If you go to John 1:14, it says, and the Word, Yod He Vav He, was made flesh, transformed into an embryo. And then Yod He Vav He became Yahashua. Says, therefore also that holy thing which shall be born of you shall be called the child of God. This is a surrogacy. Mary agrees to carry a pregnancy for God, who will become the newborn of Yahashua, parents after birth. So she was just a surrogate. If you go back to Jesus was God and with God in the beginning, how can she be his natural mother if he existed in the beginning and created the world? Go to John 3:16. It says, for God so loved the world that he gave Yahashua, his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. We want to go back to talk about John. It says, after those days, Elizabeth conceived and hid herself 5 months. Why did Elizabeth hid herself 5 months? If you go back to Leviticus 20:10, and the man that committed adultery with another man's wife, even he that hath committed adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and adulteress shall be put to death. She hid herself because under the law back then they would be killed. Again, verse 25 saying, thus hath the Lord dealt with me in the days wherein he looked on me to take away my reproach among men. In other words, she knew that this God did. She knew she didn't have sex with anybody, and she knew she got pregnant. So she knew that it had to be of God. Go to Matthew 11:14 again, and if you receive it, this is Elijah, which was to come. He that have an ear to hear, let him hear. You go back to 2 Kings 1:18, it says, and they answered him, he was a hairy man, and wore a girdle of leather about his loins. And he said, it is Elijah, the prisoner. Now if you go to Matthew 3:4, and the same Yachanan had his covering of camel's hair, hairy, and a leather belt about his waist. The reason they call him Elijah the prisoner, because what happens to Yachanan? He end up going to prison and being beheaded. It was his destiny. These things might seem impossible to us because we don't perform them on the daily basis. Because man don't have the ability to do it, it seems impossible. God has the ability to do these things. Does not the potter have power over the clay? Okay, now we at Matthew chapter 10, verses 26 to 30. So this is talking about fearing God alone. And the reason it say fear not them. Therefore, why is it saying fear not them? Just go back to Matthew 10, verses 16 to 25. Just to review, to get your mind back focused. It said, behold, I send you forth as leukocytes in the midst of infectious diseases. It says, but beware of who? Men. For they will deliver you up to their councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues, and ye shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. And then you go to verse 21, it says, and a brother shall deliver up a brother to death, and a father the child, and the child shall raise up against their parents, and cause them to be put to death. And you, talking about Israel, shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end, the same shall be saved. So he's saying, fear not them therefore, for there is nothing covered that shall not be uncovered, and hid or kept secret, private, that shall not be made public. What I tell you in darkness, somehow in your head, in your genetic code, deep down inside of you where nobody can see the things he speak to you, that speak ye in the light. Speak it out your mouth. That is what I'm doing with this Gospel of the Kingdom YouTube channel. The scriptures say in Matthew and in Mark that the gospel shall be openly published to all nations. Then shall the end come. It's saying what you hear, and what you hear in the ear, that preach you upon the housetops. And fear not them which kill the body. This is talking about the tissue, the flesh, the cells, but are not able to kill the soul. This word soul is talking about the life of the flesh, the DNA, your genetic code. They can kill your body. They cannot get rid of your genetic code. It is a record in heaven, in the DNA forever, can't be killed. If you go back to Genesis chapter 2:7-8, it's saying Yod He Vav He pottered the red man out of the dust of the red clay, and Yod He Vav He breathed into his nostrils the breath, the spirit. This is DNA of life. Again, Leviticus 17:11. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, not in the body. The body profit nothing. It comes from non-living materials. For the life of the flesh is talking about of the cells. And inside the cell is the nucleus. Inside nucleus, 46 chromosomes. Around those 46 chromosomes, wrap your DNA, your genetic code, your programming and information, your life. And then what does that DNA come from? Hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus. When you die, what happened? You take your last breath. The scriptures say the body returns to the ground and the spirit return unto God who gave it. It's talking about hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon. What is in these things? Information and instructions in genetic code that cannot be killed. It says, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both souls. So who can destroy souls? Who can get rid of DNA, your genetic code, your instructions and information? It say, and your body, talking about the flesh, the tissue, the cells. He can destroy them. We're in the lake of fire. So don't fear people that can kill the body. The body profit nothing anyway. We was created to die once. But after death is life. That's why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the death of the saints in the eyes of God. Go to John chapter 6 and 63. It is the spirit, DNA, that quicken springs to life. The flesh profit nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit. They are informations and instructions to restore the genetic code. And they are life. Matthew chapter 9, verses 23 to 25. And when Yahushua came into the ruler's house and saw the musicians and the people making noise, in other words, it was a funeral, he said unto them, give place, for the maid is not dead. He said, she does not cease to exist. But sleep. She's just dormant, temporarily inactive. And they laughed him to scorn. But when the people were put forth, he went in and took her by the hand, and the maid rose. I'm going to jump to Mark, because Mark gives a little bit more details. And he came into the house, and the rulers of the synagogues, and see the tumult, it's the same thing, the funeral, and them that wept and wailed greatly. And when he came in, he said unto them, why make ye this ado? Why make all this noise and cry? The damsel is not dead. She does not cease to exist, so why cry? But sleep. Temporarily inactive, just dormant. And they laughed him to scorn. But when he had put them all out, he taketh the father and the mother of the damsel, and them that were with him, to mount his disciples, and entered in where the damsel was laying. And he took the damsel by the hand, and said unto her. Again, go to John 6 and 63. It is the spirit that quickeneth, the DNA, the hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus, that spring to life. The flesh profit nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit, they are oxygen, nitrogen. They are information and instructions. They restore, and they are life. He said, Tatala Kuma, which is being interpreted, damsel, I say unto thee, arise, and straightway the damsel arose. Go to Genesis chapter 7 and 2. In Yod He Vav He pottered Adam of the dust of the ground, the red clay. In Yod He Vav He breathed into his nostrils the spirit, DNA of life. And Adam became a living soul. He did the exact same thing to the damsel. He breathed into her. He said, damsel, I say arise, his breath. And he ordered her life to go back into her, just like when he created Adam. And straightway the damsel arose. Saying Adam became a living soul, and straightway Adam rose. We have verse 29, it says, are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing? And one of them shall not fall to the ground without your Father. Again, this is a parable 2 sparrows are 2 birds. A bird plus a bird equals a fathering. So in other words, are not 2 bodies purchased for a fathering, means for the price of 1. What is he talking about here? Let's go 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 19 to 20. What, know ye not that your body is the temple, talking about the house, the property of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which you have of God, and you are not your own, for you are purchased with a price. Galatians 3:13, Christ hath redeemed, this means bought, up for himself, us, from the curse of the law. And what is the curse of the law? Death. To explain that, I got 1 Corinthians 15 and 56 here. The sting of death is sin. The strength of sin is the law. What is the law? The law is a curse. If you go to Galatians 26:5, it says, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge and kept my commandments and my statutes and my Torah. This is where the word Torah comes from. It comes from the Hebrew word for law. Again, I talk about some of this stuff in Patches and Wineskin. I want to explain the sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. In the book of Genesis, Adam had one law, one Torah. Don't eat of the forbidden fruit, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He broke that one law. He broke that law, and by the time you get to Exodus, it went from 1 law to 10 laws. The Torah is basically the first 5 books of Moses. It explains the origin of law. So he had 1 law. Man break the 1 law, more laws added. This is Exodus when they received the 10 commandments. The Israelites break all of these laws. Every time they break laws, more laws are added. More laws are added, they break those laws, God add more laws. By the time you get to the book of the end of Deuteronomy, there are 613 laws. So for one, people who talking about they keep the Torah, these 613 laws, I guarantee you ain't keeping no Torah. You have to keep 613 laws, not just the Sabbath, not just not eating pork. You have to keep the yearly Sabbath where you don't work for a whole year. So if you go again, we have Romans chapter 5, verses 12 to 14. This is death in Adam, life in Christ. Say, wherefore, as by one man, sin entered into the world. Genesis chapter 2, verses 15 through 17 talks about the forbidden fruit. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, God took man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, God commanded the man. He gave him 1 Torah, saying, of every tree of the garden ye may freely eat. But of the tree of knowledge of good and evil ye shall not eat. For in the day that you eat thereof, ye shall surely die. What's going to kill you? Germs, bacteria, infectious viruses, diseases. This is why go to Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 7, the serpent's deception. Now the serpent was more cunning, intelligent than any beast in the field which Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, God has made. Why? Because he was created way before man. And he said unto the woman, yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. And this is what the woman said unto the serpent, ye may not eat of the fruit of the tree of the garden. You may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, ye shall not eat it, nor shall ye touch it, unless ye die. Why? Look, he said even touch it. Why? Because it was full of infectious viruses and diseases. Can't even touch it, or you're going to get sick, you're going to catch a virus, you're going to die. So let's go back up here real quick. What was the commandment? He get one commandment. And what was that one commandment? To save man's life. If you eat it, you're going to die. When you look at the 10 commandments, what's the purpose of the 10 commandments? Rules to keep you from killing yourself and other people. Even the 613 rules in the Torah, they was laws to try to protect man against himself. And the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die, because he knew you wasn't going to die immediately. He knew they was just going to catch a virus, that their eyes will be open, that they was going to catch an disease, and that he can take advantage of this disease. For God do know that in the day that you eat thereof, your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eye, and the tree desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband, which was with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of them both were open. What do this mean? They became carriers. Carriers, because they ate of a fruit that was infected with viruses and bacteria. Now I'm going to explain to you what this means. Before Adam and Eve ate of this infected fruit, remember I said there's 46 chromosomes in the human body, 22 pairs, and then 2 sex chromosomes. But we're not really worried about the sex chromosomes right now. We just want to talk about the 46 chromosomes. Before they ate of this infected fruit, they was unaffected. So these goat represents unaffected, healthy chromosomes. This meant all the kids that they would have had before they ate of this infected fruit, all their kids would have only been of healthy chromosomes. Unaffected. Now, because they ate, this is what I mean when I say they became carriers. They became affected, carriers, which means one out of the set of chromosomes, one copy of their chromosome became what? They became a carrier. One of the chromosomes became affected, while one of the chromosomes was still unaffected. And so I represents this here in the 46 chromosomes. You have a affected chromosome and an unaffected chromosome that make you a carrier, which means you can pass it on, not necessarily affected. So let's just keep going. So now they have children. So this is what I'm trying to get to. So, and I'm hoping you understand this. When every time a person have children, their genetic code come from their parents' chromosome, their genetic code. They get one chromosome from the parent, one of the chromosomes from the mother. So if they can get if they get the unaffected from the dad, that's here, and then get it unaffected from the mother, that's right here, that means that child is going to be an unaffected child. Now we're still at the dad, so we took an unaffected, so now we're going to go to the affected gene. So he gets one of the dad affected genes, but then he gets the mother unaffected gene. That makes this child a carrier. Now we go to the mother side. He gets the mother's unaffected gene, and then he gets the father's affected gene. That still makes the child a carrier. Now, last choice is a child get both the affected gene from the dad and the affected gene from the mom, and the child is infected. So if you have two parents that are carriers, they can infect the child. The child will be affected. They're not affected, they're just carriers. But if the child happens to get both of the same genes of carriers, the child is going to be affected. So what do we have here? We have Cain was affected. And then you have Seth, who most likely was unaffected, or at the least carrier. Now the Bible should be starting to make sense to you. But we'll keep going. Like you can now, if you take this information I just told you and apply it back to the Holy Seed mingle and also the three nations divided in the earth, the Bible starts to make perfect sense. So now let's go back to Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. It talks about the serpent deception. It says, and they knew they were naked. In other words, they recognized that sin was in the world. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. Now let's go back to, now I want to go to Genesis chapter 3, verses 14 through 15. It says, and Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh God said unto the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed above all cattle, all the domestic animals, and above every beast, basically the wild animals. When it say of the field is Africa. All life comes from African soil. That's the field. And so this is what it tells Satan. Because you have done this, you are cursed. Upon your belly shall you go, and eat dust. What is dust? Human flesh, human tissue, cells. Shall you eat all the days of your life. Satan is a hookworm, a virus, disease that causes viruses, causes sicknesses, weakens your immune system, kills you, eats your flesh. This is what Satan is. These are what devils and demons are. Hookworms, tapeworms, parasites that eats the cells in the body, weakening the immune system, spreading diseases, opening up your chromosomes and your DNA to pathogens and disease. Go to Romans chapter 5 again, verses 12 to 14. This is talking about the death of Adam. Death in Adam and life in Christ. Say, wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin. And so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. For until the law, sin was in the world. That's when I said Adam and Eve, eyes was open. They recognized sin was in the world. It says, but sin is not imputed when there is no law. This is why when you go back to, where is this at? The sting of death is sin. The strength of sin is the law. It's only of sin if God says it's a sin. That's it. It's only a sin if God says it's a sin. So when you get here, they sin, he had more laws. They break those laws, he had more laws. That's why stuff in the Torah that they did was considered sin, but stuff we can do today is considered not a sin, because he said you're not under the curse of the law anymore. Sin is whatever God says is a sin. If he tells a certain person, go a certain way, you better go that certain way. If you don't go that certain way, that is a sin. Disobedience to God is sin. God can change the rules when he wants, how he wants, whenever he wants. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over them that had not sinned. Remember, we talked about of Zacharias and Elizabeth. They said they was perfect. They didn't disobey God like Adam did. But it says, even over them that had not sinned after the similitude of Adam's transgression, who is the figure of him to come. But the reason death reigns upon all men is why? Because they're carriers. That thing that opened up our eye is carrier. So again, we're back in Matthew chapter 10, verses 26 to 30, explaining fearing God alone. He's saying, are not two bodies redeemed for the price of one? They say, one of them shall not go down to the grave, hell, without your Father. So, and again, we just talking about fear not them. Fearing God alone. If you go to John chapter 19, verses 8 through 11, it says, when Pilate therefore heard the sayings, he was more afraid, and he went again into the judgment hall and said unto Yahshua, whence are you? In other words, who are you? But Yahshua gave no answer. Then said Pilate unto him, speak you not unto me? Know you not that I have power to crucify you and power to release you? Again, and one of them shall not fail, which means go down to the grave or hell without your Father. Look what Yahshua says. Yahshua answered, you could have no power at all against me, except it were given you from above. God is in control of life and death, not man. They might think they are, they're not. They cannot kill you, not even this physical body, unless God permitted. And if he permitted, all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord. It says, but every hair on your head are all numbered. Fear you not, therefore, you are more valuable than many birds. And then this takes you back into the parable of Matthew chapter 6, verses 25 to 34, when it talks about don't worry. I'll read through this, but to get an in-depth understanding of teaching, you have to go back to the study, take no thought of your life. It says, therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, do not care about this life, the provisions of what seem necessary for your health, wherefore maintenance and protection. Say don't what you shall eat or what you shall drink. Talking about your physical, logical needs, your basic needs. Don't even worry about it. Not yet for your body, what ye shall put on. Is not life more than food? As you go through the study, you realize life is more than food that you eat, and the body more than raiment. Now, the body is more than clothes. It's more than physiological needs. You realize that in this lesson. It say, behold, the fowls, talking about sparrows of the air. For they plant not, neither do they reap, neither do they gather barns, yet the heavenly Father feed them. Are you not much better than they? You are more valuable than many sparrows. Which of you, by taking thought, can add any length of time unto his life? God controls life and death. God set man days at a number at 120 years. Just like he told the seas where they cannot pass, he told men, ye shall not pass 120 years. And why take ye thought of clothing? Consider the lilies in the field, how they grow. They don't work, neither do they make clothing. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothe the grass of the field, which is today, is, and tomorrow is cast into the fire, cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? Have faith, people. Therefore take no thought, do not care about these things, saying what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, or wherewith shall ye be clothed. For after these things do the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father know that you have need of all these things. But seek you first the kingdom of God, eternal life, and his righteousness. And all these things shall be added unto you. Take therefore no thought for tomorrow shall take thought of things of itself. Again, just want to quote 33, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take no thought, therefore, for tomorrow shall take thought of things of itself. And again, I'll go over this in depth, where we talk about a treasure in heaven, because life is more than what it appears to us today. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. This pretty much concludes this gospel.